Eric, you've been part of the team that's looking at how we can change the competency matching process for associates going through final assessment. Can you tell us about the mechanism that you're proposing?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, just for background, we had a process in the past where associates were able to choose 3 competencies in no particular order, and they submitted those 3 competencies, and then there was a bunch of discussions that were held, and then they were told somewhere in the summer for those joining in September, and somewhere in the winter for those joining in May, where they ended up. And the process as such lacked a little bit of the transparency we wanted, and the feeling that people's best interests are really being kept in mind when they're being matched to competencies. So I looked at a model that was developed actually by 2 economists back in the 1960s, one of which recently won the Nobel Prize, for using an algorithm to do the matching as opposed to having complicated conversations where there's wheeling and dealing. And I'm going to explain to you how that algorithm works. It's basically something that's very useful when you have 2 sets of, say, individuals, or maybe competencies in our case, and they both have preferences over who they want to be matched with on the other side. So the initial model presented by the 2 economists was called the stable marriage model.
Okay.
The stable marriage problem. It was basically, they were asking the question, how come people don't get divorced more than they actually do? You know, why are people in marriage and as opposed to jumping partners every other day? And they thought about this and they said, you know, maybe it's because by the time you get married, you've had a lot of sort of proposals, or at least girlfriends or boyfriends, and by the time you decide to get married, you're pretty sure of who you want to be with. And the reason is you've had years and years to go be on the dating scene, and by the time you made your decision, it was pretty much the best match you could have gotten.
Okay.
So that you didn't have to say, yes, I will marry you to the first boy who ever gave you a kiss in primary school. You had that time to go through the whole process.
Okay.
So in our model, we'd like to create that semblance of an iterative process where you get many offers from various locations, and at the end you choose which of all those offers you received you prefer.
Great.
So that's kind of the intuition behind it.
Right, so how will this work at PwC?
Right, so we're not men and women trying to get married, we're competencies and associates trying to get matched together.
Yeah.
Now, unlike the current process, in this new mechanism that I'm proposing, each associate would rank all the competencies, all 8 of them, so in order of most preferred to least preferred. So you wouldn't just submit 3, you would submit the whole list. On the other side, the competencies would also rank their associates in their preferred order. And then they would start making offers to each of the associates in turn. So let's say you're finance, that's the competency, and you have a quota of perhaps 20 people that are going to join your competency out of a group of 80. What you would do is you'd go to the people on your list, the first 20 people, and you start making offers to them. And those people, if you're the first competency to give them an offer, they would all say to you, okay, thanks for the offer, I'll consider it. I'll say yes for now, but if I were to get a better offer from the competency I prefer later on, I'll switch. So it's almost like they're kind of engaged, but they're not married.
Yeah.
And they're not engaged to the point of saying, I promise to you. I'm saying, I'll hold off and tell you at the end whether or not I accept. In the second round, if finance got rejected by a few, then they can go on and ask yet more people, hey, do you want to join finance? And meanwhile, other competencies are also making choices, and they're competing with finance over those best candidates. So the best candidates are going to be very spoiled for choice, and the candidates who get fewer choices may not get their top pick, unfortunately, because it is still a competitive process, and you are still in competition with other associates, just like competencies are in competition for you if you're a highly sought after person. So it is a competitive process, but it really works in your favor in that you will never be placed in a competency if a competency that you preferred actually wanted to make you an offer.
So it's sort of a way for you to get the best possible outcome that you can get.
Exactly, the best possible outcome that you can get. You're not guaranteed to get your first choice, because let's say you want to go into a highly sought after competency. Maybe there are other candidates who got picked before you, and that's simply the reality of being in this environment with so many people. But you will get the best you can get, and you will never be placed somewhere against your will, if there was another competency you would rather go to, that made you an offer.
Okay, fantastic.
Right.
Let's have a look at the software.
Okay, all right, so what we see in this spreadsheet is a mock-up that I created, which will allow us to get a sense of how this actually works when you run through it. So I invented 24 candidates that you see listed along the top here. They're called Bob, Susan, Bill, Joe, etc. And they've all ranked their preferences of competency from first, which is their most preferred, to eighth, which is their least preferred. So if we look at Bob, for instance, Bob's number one choice is risk, followed by PPM, then strategy, people and change, DDB, and so on. Susan, on the other hand, her number one choice is strategy, followed by risk, and then operations. So these are her preferences, and of course she would love to get an offer from strategy, because that means she gets her best choice. And each one is listed. We can look along to the end. They've all got their names in this table. Further down, we see the competencies and their list of preferred candidates. So each competency in this model has been given a quota, which is fairly low because we're only dealing with 24 candidates. Obviously, when that number increases to a realistic figure like 80, these candidate quotas will also increase accordingly. But taking operations as an example, if operations gets to pick their top 3 candidates to fill their quota of 3, they would pick Hannah, Jude, and Stan, because those are the ones they really want. But they've also ranked people below that in case they don't get all their top choices. So they've ranked Emma as their 4th, Bill as 5th, Gabe, and so on. And generally, competencies are going to be submitting lists of candidates that are longer than their quota. Okay. Exactly how long? I think we're still in discussions about, but about at least twice as many as their quotas allow, just in case they don't get their top choices. Now, in my example here, everything is random, so I didn't construct these tables to illustrate any kind of preference of certain candidates. Hannah is number top in operations, but if we look at PPM, for instance, she's in the middle, and somewhere else she's probably near the bottom there. So it's entirely random. In reality, associates will be working hard to network, to get on projects and competencies that they choose, that they like. So you're going to see a closer match between who competencies want to take on and where those candidates want to end up. Hopefully we'll get perfect matches for many people. But this process does ensure that if you don't get a perfect match, you at least get the best you can get.
Yep. And this aspect is no different from previous competency matching, in that everyone needs to network and make their own relationships. That's
right. So you're still going to be networking using this model. You're still going to be going to those competencies that you're interested in, saying, here's who I am. Can I speak to these partner directors, senior consultants, and whoever else is good to know? You're going to be doing that just the same as before. All right, so let's see what this looks like if we were to actually run the algorithm through it. So I'm going to just explain very briefly how this algorithm works before I run it through the software. So remember that each candidate is probably going to get several offers, right? And then they choose their best one. And the way this works in reality is that operations would start off the bidding process by asking Hannah, hey Hannah, do you want to join operations? And remember, she doesn't have to accept the offer right off the bat. She'll just say yes for now. But in our particular instance, Hannah has ranked operations number 1, which means that she's really happy to get that offer. So she's going to say yes immediately. And even if she gets offers from other competencies, like maybe strategy or finance, she's never going to choose them over operations. So we know from the start that Hannah and Ops are a happy couple. After operations fill their first position, finance gets the next round pick, and they get to choose, James. James is number 1 on their list, so they'll ask, hey James, do you want to join finance? So finance is only in the middle of James's list. But remember, he hasn't received an offer from anybody else yet. So what he'll tell finance is like, okay, thanks, I'll consider your offer. If I don't get any other offers, I'll join you. But all the likelihood is James will get other offers. So they're engaged, if you will, but not married. And it continues down the list. And then as James probably gets a better offer later on, he'll switch away from finance, freeing that spot for somebody else to go into finance. So I know this is kind of complicated when I just explain it out loud like this, but I think when I show what this will look like at the end, when everybody has been matched, you'll see that it's quite a neat solution. So what I'm doing now is I'm going into this other program that's been built specifically for this purpose of doing the matching. And when I press the match candidates to competencies button in this software, it's actually going to give us the results. So I've now figured out who's ended up where, and each competency has gotten the number of candidates that their quota allocated. So if I scroll down further here in the spreadsheet, I'm now pasting in the table that this other program constructed for me. So this is where everybody ends up, and the nulls just mean there's no position there. So operations got Hannah, like we predicted. We said James got an offer from finance, but actually if you look at where James ended up, he went into technology. He got a position with them, and so that means he didn't accept the offer from finance. He got a better one in the end. And in fact, James got his third choice. So he got a few better than the first offer he was given. So now let's look at where this is, because it's kind of confusing. There's a lot of names and a lot of competencies. If I click this macro here, it's actually going to highlight for us where everybody ended up. So what you can see here is, as I scroll along, most people got in their sort of top half, and many people even got their first choices. But let's recall that this is an entirely random experiment. In reality, if you've done your networking, and if you've done had those conversations and you've done good work on projects, you're more likely to end up in the competency of your first or at least second choice than somewhere in the middle. You'd see the same here, and the competencies would also be more likely to get people at the top of their list. But even using an entirely random sample and an entirely random list of rankings, you can still see that all the competencies got people in the top half of their list. And some competencies are going to be very happy, like risk managed to get their top 2. Strategy got 2 of their top 3. So this is a transparent process. It means that after this algorithm is run, everybody got the best they could get, as opposed to feeling cheated, or as opposed to feeling that like maybe their individual career aspirations or preferences were put aside. It's a fair way of ensuring that you're not necessarily going to get your best choice or your first choice, but you will get a choice that was the best you could get under the circumstances and given the competition you were facing from other associates.
Yeah, and I think just one thing to be clear, when we've talked about this software, we've said people will get offers and they'll accept the best offer that they can get, but that's all going to be done sort of behind the scenes. You won't have lots of conversations with people making you offers. That is what this model does. That's
right. So when I say you've got many offers, you're not actually going to see all the offers that were given to you, because the software does that in the blink of an eye, knowing your preferences. If you get 3 offers, let's say Liz gets offers from PPM, DDV, and strategy, there's no reason to go to Liz and say, hey, which of these 3 do you prefer? She's already submitted her list of rankings. She already told you at the start that her number 1 choice was strategy, so that's where she goes. And yeah, that is an important distinction. So even though I mentioned earlier that it's like this long dating period before you get married, in reality, that dating period is done in a flash, because it's as if you already knew all the potential boyfriends out there and you'd made up your mind about who to marry right from the start. Okay?
Great. So we've seen a demonstration of how it works. What are the other benefits of this system?
Right. So I think it's worth highlighting a few points that are different from the way things have been run up to now. One of the things that I really like about this model is that it's, number 1, transparent, and number 2, you have every incentive as an associate to write your true list of preferences. That means there's no reason to try and game the system or to put a competency at the top that you don't really want to go into or anything like that. And the reason for that is it's okay for you to get several offers because you choose the one where you want to go into at the end, right? I think in the previous model, people occasionally thought something along the following lines. You know, I've got these three competencies to choose from. Perhaps if I put two competencies that are really difficult to get into, and I know that I'm not really going to end up there, then I'll end up in my third, which is my preferred one, right? There's no reason to do that in this model, or to do any other type of gaming, because if you want to go into a competencies and it's very competitive, put it right at the top, it's fine. If you don't get an offer, hopefully you get an offer from your second choice, you know? So that's really transparent, and it means that everybody knows what everybody else is really thinking, like what their true preferences are. And the same goes for the competencies. The competencies have every reason to list their true ranking of people they really want to see join them in the order they want to see. So that's one benefit. I think the other benefit is that whereas before you might have felt afraid of networking in certain competencies where you were unsure of if you wanted to go, maybe you felt like you really needed to signal strongly that you're going to accept only one competency and this is where you want to go, and you've made up your mind, and please nobody else talk to me, or I'm not going to go to attend any networking events or anything like that. So once again, in this system, what's really nice is that you're free to go out and explore, and hey man, if you get 5 or 6 different offers from different competencies, great, you know? That just means that you're a highly sought after person, and you're still free to choose that number one, or the best of those offers you got. So I would encourage all the associates to go out, you know, have those conversations with people all across the firm to see where you really think you'd be a good match.
That's great. It sounds really straightforward and really transparent, so I think it's going to work really well.
I hope so. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.